This meeting of the City of Eureka Springs City Council will come to order. The clerk will establish your roll.
Mr. Mitchell.
Here.
Ms. Snyder.
Here.
Mr. DeVito.
Here.
Ms. Snyder.
Here.
Mr. Pritchett.
Here.
Mr. McClellan.
Yes.
All right, everybody please stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second. Changes, deletions. Yes, Mr. DeVito.
I would like to move. There's a number of people here. I'd like to move number 7 up to number 1 under unfinished business, film industry tax incentive.
Wait, which number 7? New business?
Old business, unfinished business, number 7, film industry tax incentive update. We have somebody here to discuss that. I'd like to move that up to item number 1 under unfinished business.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Make a comment. There's also an attorney here.
I understand.
Okay.
I second.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'd like to move number 10 under new business, vacating Sweeney Alley, up to number 2 under unfinished business.
Second.
I'm sorry, which one, Mr. DeVito?
Number 2 under unfinished business.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Perkypop.
I'd like to remove item number 1 under new business, delete it. We've got that information that I
Second.
wanted.
I'll second that.
I'd like to postpone item number 6 under new business.
Second.
Postpone number 6.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a date to postpone to?
Next meeting.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We got a second on that one.
Yes.
Okay. Any others? Mr. McClellan.
Yeah, we got the budget from the CAPC. Do we need to do any kind of approval of that? The CAPC approved it last Wednesday.
I think we just look at it. I don't think
Is
we
that all?
approved their budget.
I didn't know if we had to make a motion to approve it or anything, or not. Just
No, sir. I don't
okay.
think so.
Okay.
Open it for discussion.
Mr. Mitchell?
Number 5 under new business, conditional use permit for farm animals. Just delete it.
Delete instead of postpone?
Second.
Yes.
How about number 3?
I was going to mention that briefly tonight, and we'll put an end to it.
I'd just make a motion to remove it from the agenda.
He wants to say something.
But I wanted to say something about it. You don't want it there.
Had
Okay, so
anything?
number 3 stays?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Snyder, you had your hand up?
He said what I was going to say.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, recap. Number 5 unfinished is postponed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Number 7 new business or unfinished is moved to number 1. Unfinished. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Number 1 new business is removed.
Yes.
Number 5 new business is removed. Number 6 is postponed. Correct so far?
Yes.
And then number 10 is moved to number 2 under new business.
Unfinished.
To number 2 under unfinished.
Under unfinished? Number 10 to number 2?
Correct.
Okay.
Under unfinished.
All right. Any others? Just so I know we're all on the right page here. If not, no further deletions or changes. All in favor of the amended agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, that moves us to Approval of the minutes for January the 14th, 2014.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Changes, deletions, corrections? If none, all in favor of approving the minutes for January the 14th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next will be committee, commission, authority reports and expired terms. Do we have anybody here from planning? Okay. I don't think Jim's here. I think a lot of the reports are probably in your files. I know CAPC has got their budget given to you. Hospital, no report. Parks, no report. HDCM Cemetery, no report. Yes, sir.
Mayor, didn't we have a application from Mr. Morris to,
I think it was just a renewal. Yeah.
it just renewal? We don't need to do anything with it?
No, we still have to approve.
Yeah.
Or disapprove, as the case may be.
Okay, hang on. Let me find it here. Okay, yeah, he wants to be reappointed back to his position number 4, I think it is. Ms. Snyder.
I make a motion that we accept Jim Morris's application to renew
Second.
tonight. We approve. I'm sorry.
Any discussion on it? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Morris back in at number 4. And the interim director, is it interim or has he been chosen as actual?
He was
He's actually.
He's the chair, okay. I missed a few, so. All right. Back on track. All right. Moves us into public comments. Looks like Mr. Jim Gherkin is the only gentleman up for public comment. Jim, are you out there somewhere? There he is. Okay. I figured you wasn't too far away.
Good evening. No,
How-
I wasn't too
how
far.
you,
I was
sir?
here 2 weeks ago. Where were you?
I was at home watching you guys. Y'all did good. You did good. Yeah.
I'm here probably needlessly. I hope. But I spoke to the committee about this ordinance of multifamily dwellings. Paying an annual business license, which I certainly am not opposed to. I've paid an annual business license in Eureka Springs since 1965. I have no objection to that at all. What does concern me is that it sounds like, since I have several multi-unit rental units in town, as well as several that are singles or duplexes, it sounds like this ordinance, as it's written, is discriminatory against the single units and duplexes, in that they're not going to pay a fee. The other thing is, I have one business, operates as Gherkin Rental Properties. It operates, our business operates rental properties in Eureka Springs, Holiday Island, and I have a unit in Berryville. It's all one business, so I feel that certainly I shouldn't have to pay a business license for each apartment that I rent. And I don't see any distinction in this that that tells me one way or the other. But it certainly wouldn't be fair to me if I had to pay a fee for each one of those buildings, even each building. It would be about as fair as charging Hart's Market a business expense for every can of beans they have up there. So that's really all the comment I have. As I say, I don't object to paying a business tax, but I think I just have one business. Although I do own several buildings. And as I say, some of them are single-family units, some of them are duplexes, and some of them are 4 or 5 units. That's all. That's my comment. Anybody have a question of me?
Thank you.
Say that was easy.
That was easy.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, sir. I'll take care of public comments. Okay, moves us into unfinished business. It appears that number 7 under unfinished is now number 1 in new business. Is that correct? Okay. So Sandy, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good.
Good.
Glad to see you back.
Thank
I'm here to give you an update on the film tax incentive discussion. We met with the CAPC last Wednesday and discussed the incentive as we discussed with you, and they approved to move forward and thought it was a good idea. So the next step, and I guess with your approval, is to meet with Christopher Crane from the Arkansas Film Commission, who is standing ready to set up a meeting in the next couple of weeks in Little Rock to meet with his attorneys, his legal team, to kind of develop a skeleton ordinance that will address some of the questions that you all had as far as what it could go toward, what it would be deducted from, those sorts of things, and then bring that draft back to you and make another presentation. At that point, then we could hammer out the specifics of what the tax rebate was on, and then we can detail out the percentages. So with your approval, Christopher's ready to meet in about 2 weeks with me.
Need a motion? Or we just nod our head?
Let's do it in a motion. Yeah, let's do it in a motion. So entertain a motion?
Make a motion to have Sandy go and start the verbal and paper footwork.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion on it? Not all in favor, say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Glad you're back.
Thank you. All right, moves us to the original number one, vacation.
No.
I'm sorry?
Number 10.
Oh, 10, okay, to number 2, okay. Be new business number 10 has been to move to number 2, unfinished business, vacating Sweeney Alley. So okay.
Sweeney Alley, and unfortunately, I forgot to say good evening, Council Mayor. Sweeney Alley, unfortunately, I've been locked out of my office due to we're sanding the floor, so I don't have any maps or any information to bring along. I'm assuming that we're just going to go through the preliminary steps tonight. But Sweeney Alley is about halfway on Douglas Street. Oh, you do have some things. Okay. And it's extremely steep. It goes from Douglas down to Water Street. And the Parks Commission did a site visit. We've looked at it very carefully, and our recommendation to the City Council is that it is to be vacated. The Planning Commission also looked at it, and they had the same recommendation. It has no purpose for us as a pedestrian easement, although the owners have been kind enough to offer us an 8-foot easement down along Water Street, which will assist us in our long-range terms for pedestrian traffic on Water Street. Sir?
Is that in the 320 acres or outside?
It's just outside. Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. McClung.
Yeah, Bruce, it calls that this Mr. Evans apparently owns lots 3 through 6. Somebody else owns lot 7.
Here.
Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Franco, and we own lots 3 through 6 now. We bought that 8 years ago, and recently bought lot 7 back less than a year ago. So we actually own 3 through 7, and Sweeney is between 6 and 7.
Any other question, Mr. Franklin, as long as he's up here? Thanks, sir. We'll call you if you need you. Mr. McClung.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we have the city attorney prepare an ordinance to vacate that portion of Sweeney Street or Sweeney Alley as requested.
Second.
Mr. Weaver?
Technically, first you would have to remove it from Parks jurisdiction.
Okay.
Back to you, and then an ordinance can be prepared then. So, 2 steps, but we can do it.
Okay.
We need orders to remove it and then ordinance to transfer it on.
I make a motion that we have the city attorney draft an ordinance to remove it from Parks jurisdiction.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on the first, the ordinance to transfer it out of Parks back to the cities? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Now we need another motion to
Terry?
have an ordinance to do the second part of it. As we originally
Can we do it concurrently? I can't remember if we did that
Can it
last
be on
time
the
or
same
not.
ordinance?
We typically do not do it on the same ordinance. We
Okay.
typically do a two-step process.
Okay.
Gives more public comment potential.
Consecutively, not concurrently, correct, Tim?
Yes, exactly.
Restate your motion.
No, I made the motion already with to draft an ordinance for.
Did you get it wrote down?
Redo because we had to do the other part first.
Yeah, just restate your motion to do the
Make a
ordinance.
motion that we have the city attorney draft an ordinance to remove this portion of Sweeney Street as defined by ordinance. Have him draft an ordinance.
I think I encourage you to go ahead and prepare a second ordinance for vacating.
Technically, you should do one.
Why?
Is there a second on the second motion?
Second.
Any further discussion on it? It's gonna be two separate ordinances.
We only have one right now.
Yeah. Okay, no further discussion on it. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, second motion, second ordinance carried. No? What'd I miss?
Mr. McClung just made, he only did one motion.
Oh, we did.
Just rolled it into one, okay,
He did a
okay.
second one, but he did.
Okay. All right. That one taken care of. That moves us on to the original number 1, vacating request for portion of Hartman and McCune. Is that correct? Okay. Motion to discuss.
So moved. Second.
All right, the floor is open.
Mr. Mayor, may I be heard on this matter?
Yes, sir. Hang on just a second. Let's get everybody displaced or replaced or. Go ahead and reintroduce yourself, sir.
Yes, certainly. Jim Crouch, I'm an attorney for Mr. McAvoy, Mr. Gullidge. I've been here before you. I think it was back in December, and there was discussion about the ordinance to close a portion of Hartman and McCune, and it was basically put on hold or passed to the next meeting. I could not make the next 2 meetings, so I'm here tonight to discuss that matter again. One of the issues that came up previously was whether or not the
Got it? Okay.
whether or not, particularly I believe it was the owners of Block 151 were in favor of this. They had not objected, did not appear. It was the Cross family heirs and the Matthews grandchildren irrevocable trust. They each, I think, own an undivided 1/2 interest in that Block 151. In any event, I got a hold of Mr. Cross, John Cross. He did have an email sent to me to confirm that he has no objection to it. The email's actually from Cheryl Baker, who I understand works for Mr. Cross, and so I'll pass that around. Then I got in contact with a man named Michael Matthews, who is also related to Mr. Cross, a nephew, I think. Asked him if he had any objection. He had no objection either. So I have a letter from him stating he has no objection to the closing of Hartman. He's part owner of Block 151. I know that some of you went to the site, had a site visit. I appreciate those of you that did. I think you can see what the issues are and what the terrain of the property is. As you know, we are trying to close only a portion of Hartman, not all of it, just that part that is adjacent to my client's land. There was some public objections at least the Parks Commission hearing, perhaps another hearing, from Ms. Zumwalt and from Mr. Gorell objecting to closing the Hartman south of Cross Street. So I come to you today to propose that it is our request that you close all of McCune that's adjacent to my client's property and all of Hartman that's adjacent to my client's property. However, I understand that there are some of you that may think that you should not close the property or the street south of Cross Street. I would like to suggest that it would still be appropriate to close that little portion of Hartman that is south of Cross Street. And I think you each have this little drawing in your packet, which is highlighted. It shows that portion. Well, actually, it doesn't show all the portion that we're trying to close, because it does go a little bit south of Cross Street. We're not closing Cross Street. But the reason why we would like to close that portion that's south of Cross Street is because, as I told you, my client had some trouble controlling access in and out of his property. There's a circle drive there, as you can see. Frequently people come in the circle drive. They think it's a public street. They use it. What he would like to do, of course, he knows he has to go through some approval processes through the historical district, but he would like to be able to control that access. And he can really only do that if he gets to close on both sides of Cross Street. I have a survey that I'll pass around. I've just marked it number 1. That is of this property. It was done back in 1987. It's Mr. McAvoy's and Mr. Gulledge's property. Let me just save one for myself. I've highlighted a part of it, which is a fence line that happens to now be the corner of the Zumwalt property. And if you look at that highlighted portion, it's in the middle of Hartman Street, according to this survey. We've also had a survey done in 1996 which I'll show you is number 2. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, if you don't mind passing those around. This survey is essentially, and this was done by, let me see who did this, Mr. McKinney. It's essentially the same as the survey that was done back in 1987. Not quite the same angle, but you can see that the property line of my client goes right across this circle drive at the end of Cross Street. So it's our contention that basically agrees with the survey in 1987, which shows that Ms. Zumwalt's property is in the corner of Hartman. One more survey to show you. And this survey was done several years ago. Mr. McAvoy requested that I believe it was the historical district, try to find the center line of Hartman. And so he had a survey, actually, as I understand, the city had the surveyor come out to find the center line of that street. many papers. This is number 3. And again, it essentially agrees with the first 2 surveys that I've handed you. Now, here's the point of showing you all of this, that we think you should go ahead and close, if you're inclined to close Hartman at all, that you close it on both sides of Cross Street. Because Ms. Zumwalt has essentially already gotten her 15 feet. So she won't have to move her fence line. She won't have to move her corner of her fence. She's built a pool there. She won't have to move the pool equipment. As I say, she's already gotten her share of the street according to these surveys. So I think it's only fair that Mr. McAvoy get the other 15 feet. It won't really prohibit Ms. Let's assume that Ms. Zumwalt's property isn't in the middle of the street. If she still has 15 feet, she's got 15 feet. It does not keep her from getting access to the back of her property because she's got 15 feet with which to do it. As far as Mr. Gorell's concerned, if you were out there, I know you're out there when the leaves were off, but if you were out there, you saw that there's really not a road down to Mr. Gorell's property. There is abundant timber, although I understand somebody cut some timber in the road, but that wasn't done when we started this process. It was completely blocked off. There was no way to get through to Mr. Gorell's property. There's just no trail, no evidence that anybody's ever used it. So I've come here today to ask you to close that portion of Hartman that we've requested, or alternatively, that you close it up to Cross Street and not south of that, and that you close McEwen. I did bring my own ordinances, Mr. Weaver. I think you may have those in your packet, but I have one that proposes to close it all the way, even past Cross Street, but only to the edge of my client's property. And then one that proposes to close it only to the edge of corner of Cross Street. I also, by the way, have an ordinance to reclaim jurisdiction. I'm not familiar with all the ways in which you do your procedures. I would request that you consider waiving and suspending the rules and not having 3 readings, but that's obviously up to you. But we've been here several times, so be glad to answer any questions. Mr. McAvoy is in the back here. I'm sure he can answer questions if you have any.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes. I got the opportunity to meet Mr. McAvoy and walk this property and everything. And at the time I did, my biggest concern in discussing with him is I didn't understand the Zumwalt property, which you've done a very good job of explaining. That in fact her property has been for a good while evidently encroaching on easement that belonged to the city, which was never challenged before. And from my site visit, her pool house and part of her pool is, in fact, in Hartman Street.
It would appear so.
Which I find most interesting. I also found that it was absolutely impossible to walk on Hartman Street at all. I had to stay away from it because it just drops off. If you ever want to put a trail there, you'll have to be a mountain goat to pull it off. That was my only comments.
I also went out to the site. I tend to favor the second proposal you had, and that is to vacate Hartman up to Cross Street, but not the portion south there, because I still think no matter what the situation is here with the Zumwalt property, there's still an access point there. And secondly, if Parks still wants to create a sort of a loop, a trail loop, then that alley, is that alley that you've got an alley noted here, just south of your client's property, is that open or has that been vacated?
Well, may I comment on that? I guess you're asking me. Originally we asked that be vacated, but we decided not to come to the council for that. So there is an alley. It's an unnamed alley. So it exists on paper. It doesn't really exist reality.
Well, and let me continue, and that's the way a lot of these streets are platted like that in Eureka Springs, and I don't know, I haven't spoken with our Parks Director about this, but that just stood out to me as instead of using Hartman as a means to create a loop around, that we could use that alley instead of Hartman, and McCune is a no-brainer, but I would say that we stop McCune right at the so that it does not allow or infringe on the ability to use that alley as a loop at a later date for a potential pedestrian or hiking path. And do you see where I'm talking about? Right there, where the 50-foot, where it says right at McCune, where your yellow stops at the very southern portion. I mean, just right there at that area, and leave that open so that you can still access around the property. That's just my thoughts on this. I don't think, even though Ms. Umwald has, our previous owner or somebody has encroached here on this street on Hartman, it appears to be something that we just don't want to get into to force them to move their pool house or their pool or anything like that. I think that's unfair. But I think we should leave that open, and that's my opinion.
Mr. McCoy.
Have you checked the plat records to see if Zumwalt has a survey for her property, a recorded survey?
There is, Mr. Levine may be able to talk to that. There is, somebody asked a surveyor to compare some surveys, and it's a drawing. It's not really a plat of survey, but there's.
Does she?
I don't know if she has.
I believe she has a plat of her property.
Okay. She has not presented it here.
She hasn't had any reason to.
Well, she might have if she wanted to protect the alley from being closed.
She hasn't asked. She has no reason to.
Well,
in my opinion, she doesn't. That's just my opinion.
Sure.
So, if there's a stink to develop over Hartman because of that, that's between those two parties, not us. I cannot, with the location of Hartman as I looked at it, south of Cross Street, that, we can't close it. And I suggested it, that we close it up to Cross Street and quit there, and I still have to go along with my decision on that.
Yes, sir. And that's why we presented two alternatives.
Sure.
Again, it's our preference to close it all.
Is the goal to gate Cross Street?
No, not Cross Street, just that circle, which we contend is not Cross Street.
So you would put an access gate over that?
Yes.
Snyder.
Typical Eureka problem. Okay, we have people encroaching on private property. We have people trying to go onto KJ's property, which is damaging what Jim McAvoy has on the corner of his property because it isn't clarified. We have Parks wanting to do a trail, which would be basically about 5 yards from a private porch with strangers meandering on by. None of this is good. Bruce, can I ask you up there, please?
Yes. If you'll allow me, I may be able to answer these questions after the hearing.
Okay, you and I had quite a discussion about this.
Can we first slice this into the area that's south of,
right.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
That's
not the Hartman that's by the
Hartman that's
Cross
south of Cross Street.
I'm terrible with directions.
Okay,
That's towards
there are
KJ's and Garage.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And I can be brief on that because I think there's several issues there that make it, in my opinion, absolutely incomprehensible that we would close that. And they are this. One, there is a reservation. These reservations were given to us by the federal government in 1886. These are sacred, these reservations. We only have so many of them, whether they are developed or undeveloped. Undeveloped in some respects are as important or as interesting because we have something that has never been developed called Mooney Reservation, Mooney Spring. To block off Hartman on the south would not allow the public or parks to have vehicular access to that reservation. To suggest, as has been suggested in the past, that we come down Judah Street and go to Klein and then come up and then hit Hartman, absurd. It's not usable. So this is an access that parks and the public has that will go approximately 30 or 40 feet, and you're there at a federal spring reservation that was given us to by the government. The third reason is the two owners, Zumwalt and Gorell, are both opposed. So you have four parties opposed: the public, the parks, Zumwalt, and Gorell.
Okay, now, someone
Now,
brought up
just
using
let
the alley.
me finish about the surveys. We are not surveyors, nor are we arbitrators of surveyors. Many times, a survey in 1987 may be retraced by the survey in 96, retraced by the survey in 2001, retraced by the survey in 2007, referred to once again in 2010. We don't know. We're not arbitrators of surveys. Did they ever come from a different point? Have they come from a point east, west, north, south? Did they all come to the same point? I don't know. So that's my spiel on south.
Okay, now, it
Cross
was
Street.
just brought up about using the alleyway that is not being requested to be closed on the southern part of their property, and that you could use the trails to route there. Is this
We could not get to
possible?
that alleyway if Hartman were closed.
No. Ignore Hartman right now.
Okay.
Could the alleyway, the unnamed alley, could that be used to access Mooney Springs?
No.
Rather than
No.
Hartman?
No.
Okay. Jim, would you come up, please? Maybe get 'em all at once.
In response to what,
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Jim McAvoy. I've resided at 18 Chestnut Street here in Eureka Springs
Thank you.
since 1996. In response to Mr. Levine's question that you asked him, that is drivable from Judah, and it is very walkable as much as it is through Hartman Street. And you can have access from downtown from that alley that you were just talking about on the south side of my property. Okay, and also I did some checking on the reservations here in town, Mooney Reservation, Table Rock Reservation, and several other ones. Those are not federal, those are city, like a city park. Okay, so they're not federally owned, they're owned by the city of Eureka
I
Springs.
think they said they donated to us.
Okay.
Okay, so my question to you is, because I got totally confused, on where the circle driveway starts and where KJ's corner is, okay, are you saying that you would be willing to just have up to that corner closed as opposed to past Hartman? I mean, as opposed to past that corner on Hartman?
Well, my preference is to have it closed to the corner
whole
of my
Hartman
lot.
Street.
Not the whole Hartman Street, just to the corner of Lot 1, you'll see right there. That's
okay.
on Block 123. That was my
That where our
original
little building
request.
is. Right.
Yes, and that's, I requested that it be closed to there, but if that is not an option for me, then I would like for it to be closed up to Cross Street.
Okay, so Hartman going all the way across Cross Street.
No.
Yes, actually
Yes.
that is. Yeah, going downhill, going south or north.
Yes, okay. If it was closed off, the access, in regards to vehicles on southern part of Hartman, KJ has a gate right there and, you know, her pool and stuff like that. You've been having some property damage from big vehicles trying to get around that corner and onto her property.
Because it's a hairpin 90-degree
Yeah,
turn.
it's a really sharp turn. If we would close the access for you up to that point, would you be willing to work something out with KJ in regards to if she should need a vehicle to get in the pool area, that they could turn around or something on your circular driveway and therefore pull in without having to run over your rocks or fence or whatever would be there?
Well, Mickey, she has had this summer a swim and fall pool put in, and there's her fence is that hog wire farm utility fence, and she has a gate up front that she could access by her front gate that goes into her front door, and she also made another one that is a straight shot into her pool area that the pool companies had to have a big enough, they had cement mixers that they could get into there. So
you're saying that access to that backside of the property by big vehicles probably wouldn't be needed at this point?
Correct. And nor would I really care for that either, because I would like to have a gate there, Mickey, and if my gate was closed and,
And you're talking all the way across where the circular driveway is.
Well, right, because that's my private land. It's been confused in the past as Hartman or Chestnut Circle, and it's not. I've looked on the city map, and the city has a map they hand out to tourists as Amity coming all the way down, showing my circle drive on my private land as being part of Amity Street.
Well, I told all of you for 40 years I thought that was Amity.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I
Sure.
appreciate
Mr.
that.
Mitchell, you're next.
Yes, sir. A question then. We resolved probably the issue with the Zoom wall per se, but Bruce had an interesting question. He was still concerned about vehicular access on Hartman Street to Moody. So are you saying if somebody comes down Cross Street, at the time they get to Cross Street where Hartman is, the 15 feet that is left over of Hartman Street, which is behind Zumwalt Street, are we saying that there will be access for a vehicle to make a turn off of Cross Street behind the Zumwalt property on that 15 feet and then continue south?
No, there's not. Not if, David, I've had rocks and boulders. I've been suggested by my legal counsel to mark. I've had pins put in on that lot 1, right in that corner that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And mysteriously, I'm not accusing anyone, but those are always come up missing. My pins are pulled out of the ground, mm-hmm. and my rocks are moved. And I have several that are like 600-pound boulders, and those have also been moved by crowbars, which I have videotape of as well. But the problem is if those rocks and boulders are on my property line on Lot 1, there is not room for a vehicle bigger than the one Bruce Levine drives, which is considered an economy car or economy truck. He's got a Toyota, the old ones. And so a regular-sized truck, there's not room without pushing my landscaping and tearing my stuff up. There's not room for a full-size truck.
But you could use Hartman Street as a pathway or a walkway, hiking trail. If we leave the alley open, you could come around Hartman, the 15-foot, drop down the alley and come around.
That's correct.
And Klein Street does access the reserve, correct? That is
Klein Street, it goes right to the front of it. You don't have to, and so does if you go to the end of Judah Street. Mm-hmm. You park at the end of Judah, you can walk a few feet, and it'd be actually closer to go that way or through Klein. And yes, there is options for loops.
So we still can have a trail And we can still access the reservation.
That's correct. It's
Okay.
not blocking it off in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
It would be one corner of that. And can I please say also that, okay, Hartman Street south of that cross, there's only a 15-foot access available now because 15 feet have been encroached upon. So if Bruce and Zumwalt and KJ, like my attorney suggested, if they want to have access, well then shouldn't she have to move her shed, her pool house? Why should I have to pay the price, I feel, and why is it my problem? I bought this property with this existing problem. I'm making it aware to the city council members that there's only 15 feet of that road that's accessible, and that's what the problem is. If it was a 30-foot road and especially paved, we wouldn't be having this conversation here right now because it's not a 30-foot access that's available at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Witt.
Well, if I read these schematics right, I understand why you're wanting to close south of Cross Street because your driveway has encroached on Hartman Street. Is that correct?
No, no.
Well, by these plats, it shows that it's encroached on Hartman Street and that part of your
My driveway or my land?
your driveway.
The loop.
No, there's actually, that is not a real accurate drawing, James.
Every
as to
one
where
of
it
these
starts.
surveys, all three of these surveys show encroachment by your driveway on
Well,
Hartman Street.
James, those were hand-drawn in at a later date, and that's what they told me. Those weren't measured like everything else. That's what Varam McKinney told me, that he would draw in my driveway into that survey, but as if you can see, there was no survey measurements or pins or anything marking that.
If your driveway was to have been moved,
My driveway starts right at where Cross Street ends.
then you could gate your driveway at that point.
I could, yes.
So that, to me, seems like the logical solution here, that you just gate your driveway on your property at the edge of Hartman Street.
Well, if I did that, though, then that's going to be kind of, if you would have been kind enough to make a site visit like I'd asked
I've been
you.
up there many times.
Well, I know you had, James, but I really would appreciate it if you would have been there so I could show you personally at least to show you my side of the story.
With all due respect, I'm going by a surveyor's, three different surveys here.
But the driveway was hand-drawn in, James.
And maybe you're missing my point, that you could gate your driveway at the edge of your property where it adjoins Hartman Street.
I could.
Correct. Thank you.
Mr. Perkins.
Well, and when I visited your property, I recommended that, you were having problems with people moving the boundary and moving the pins and everything. And I recommended that you have like a short reinforced concrete wall there,
Which I really like a lot.
And I think at that point, that would be a good attachment point for a gate. And I think, we need to just leave that portion of Hartman open south of Cross Street. I'm for vacating it right to the corner of Lot 151, right there where you show it. I do think that there appears to have been some encroachment of your driveway onto that over time, but that's the way things have gone in Eureka Springs for 100 years or more. But let's just cut to the chase here. Let's provide some positive relief from that traffic. With the traffic barrier, basically, you're not going to have any more of that large traffic come through there. But 15 feet is still wide enough for me to get my pickup through there. Now, will I have to back up and, yeah.
When you are backing up, you don't. I've lived there a long time. When people back up, there's no way when you're backing up out of there to not come onto my property.
I'm just saying if it's gated, if your property's gated and you have that barrier there right immediately behind the Zumwalt property, then you've kind of she can still have access. The Grells can have access. Parks can have access. The public can have access, and you get most of what you want, because there's no doubt we're going to vacate McKeon. That's just a no-brainer. It's right by your house, and I think a good compromise here would be to say, okay, I'll accept that vacation, and if you want to put a lock gate there, or a driveway gate, or automatic gate, I think that would be good to keep people off your property.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if that's my only option, then yes, I will accept that.
Ms. Eller, do you have something to say? You had your hand up.
Well, I was just wondering, I just had a question. If he said the people tear up the landscaping to get in there, would they not also break down the gate?
Well, that was one of my questions too, Joyce. And then that would be damage of property.
I mean, it just seems to me that Cross Street should dead end there, period. I mean, you just can't get out of that end.
Well, that's a law enforcement thing at that point.
Yeah, okay.
Well, but then the law enforcement tells me that's not them. It's a city thing, or it's a...
Boundaries are city issues, not police.
Right. They tell me exactly to come see you, and then the exact opposite. You're just saying no. So that's not going to work.
Well, definitely, we're going to have to do signs that say no through street, no access, whatever, before they turn onto this cross street from Amity. We're going to have to. It should have been done ages ago. My question now, though, is if we vacate all of Hartman up to this first edge of Cross, right? Okay, Parks has a problem because they want to do a trail. Now, true, Hartman is literally feet away from their porch. So if they're out there having beer and a cigarette, they have strangers meandering on through. I mean, this is not cool at all. At the same time, we can't keep giving up property. So we're going to have to do some kind of a compromise. And I'm wondering if there is any way, looking at looking at Cross's property right next to this highlighted part of Hartman, do you think it would be a problem if you end up wanting to put a trail through? I know you want to, but when you finally get to that point, do you think there would be a problem with John Cross in regards to running the trail on his property, which is nothing but leftover woods anyway, rather than 2 feet from his porch?
Ms. Schneider, let me make sure that have we talked all we need to talk about south of Cross?
But
I don't think the two mix.
It ties together.
Okay, then let me start back at south of Cross. To close that portion of Hartman Street effectively closes the rest of Hartman Street going to the south. Mm-hmm. It does. That's the end of that access.
Okay, so if you close this
if you
part.
If you close the southern part, the part that we've been talking about before, by KJ's and on down, that effectively closes Hartman Street to vehicular access, notwithstanding what's been said about Judah Street. I won't stand up here and debate back and forth, but that's not happening. We have a mere 40 feet to get to our spring reservation on this method. Please do not close south of Cross Street. Okay, now if we'll move to north. Now, it may be that we all are in agreement. We've looked at that. We've walked it. It's not the ideal spot for pedestrian easement. We all agree. We agree at Parks. Now, what we do ask is to please let us take our time and be able to find another alternative route, which we see there is a few of them. But when we walked with Alderman McClung, Bill Featherstone and I, we did find where Amity Street continues and becomes into the green area. That might be a good access, but we don't know where it is on the ground. There's another street called Elm Street that goes down to Ozark, that comes through the hollow, that may come around, and it may come in a long street. There is going to have to be a bridge built down below to cross the hollow, but, you know, that's something we can do. So, but if you would just allow us some time, and 3 months, to be able to research all the other possibilities, I think that's a potential candidate for vacation.
Okay, so basically you're saying if you can find an alternate in the area,
Which we want to look for.
you will have no problem giving up
Yes.
Hartman.
Yes, Hartman to the north.
Can you wait 3 months, Jim? I know it's been a long time. I don't know what kind of plans you have.
May I comment on this? Mr. Mayor?
Somebody, anybody else?
We filed our petition last summer in the middle of July. We've been to 2 meetings with the Parks Department. We went to a meeting with the Planning Commission. This is our 2nd meeting here. Now, the Parks Department back in July or August said, we're going to come up with a master trail plan. Actually, I'm not sure they said that then. They've said it since we've appealed to the City Council. They do not have, as far as I know, a master trail plan that even shows a trail to this Mooney Springs. Here's something that we've lost sight of, folks. Nobody has said that they found anything of interest in a place called Mooney Springs. And it may be there, but I tramped around it. I could not find any springs. And it's pretty darn hard to get to. And if you look at the way it's configured, Mooney Springs Reservation, with regard to Hartman Street, only one little corner of it touches it. So the best access to it is Klein Street. If it was a place of interest that was worth putting a trail to, I'd be the first one to say, let's save it. But frankly, ladies and gentlemen, you've got a lot of great trails, a lot of great sites here, and this just isn't one of them.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a federal reservation that belongs to the city of Eureka Springs. Whether the eminent lawyer does not see any interest in it, we certainly do.
I will make a motion to instruct the city attorney to draft an ordinance vacating McCune Street adjacent to lots...
Staying away from parks first.
Okay. Removing control of McCune Street adjoining lots 122 and 123, and the portion of Hartman Street adjoining lots 122 and 123, not passing south of Cross Street. Not passing south of the corner of lot 151 adjoining Cross Street.
Everything in yellow, basically.
I'll second that.
Yes.
We can fry that other fish at a later date.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Further discussion on that?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'd like to clarify where we're going to vacate McCune. I still think we need to have some access from the alley. So right here at lot 5, and I think
there would be access because the corner of 123 does not encroach on that alleyway.
Is that what you said, lot 3 and lot 8? That
122 and 123 for McCune vacation.
Well, those are block numbers, Jim.
Block numbers.
Parks made a
Yeah,
very
that's-
specific
yes.
recommendation